Today I'm tying a Marabou jig on an old 1/32 Ament style head. Stay tuned. Morning. So going through my collection, I found some jigs that came out of an old Ament mold, which was pretty popular in the, I'm guessing, 50s into the 60s. And I just for fun, found some hooks that would fit in the mold and cast them up. And what we have here, and the camera's actually zoomed in pretty far because these are tiny, but we're going to tie the 1/32, but I have the 1/8 and the 1/4. So here's a 1/8 head. Let's see, yep, we're zoomed in good. And this is an interesting little jig head. It does have the Popeye style eyes where they kind of stick out, and you have the collar, the extended collar, to help your material flare. So we're not tying on a bare hook today. Here's the 1/4. Again, it's got the, I'm not sure if they really show up, but the eyes are not recessed. They do extend or stick out from the head. So it's that Popeye type eyes. And again, the collar. The interesting thing on each of these is the collar is the same size. So the collar was specifically there to help flare your material, not to give you a wider space as the jigs got bigger to tie on your material, or to add additional weight to for the balance. The balance on a 90-degree hook is still right below the eye on these. So they're very interesting jigs. Casting with some of these old molds is a little bit difficult. The Ament molds in this style were still the poured aluminum, the sand cast aluminum. So they were, you know, basic molds. So might even be a little bit older than the 50s. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know the history on Ament and their molds. I know a lot of their molds are a little bit fancier and better produced with aluminum block. You know, just like a more modern type head, and actually had some machining. These were sand cast. It's pretty obvious. But very interesting jig, and I do like this 1/32 size. So and that's what we're going to tie here today. I do place it in the vise closer to the tip, just to give me a little bit more access to that collar. So it's about in the center of my jaws, not all the way back. It's going to be a two-colored Marabou jig. I'm going to go with orange and white for this. I'm going to use black thread for the collar. So I'm going to start with my 2/0 Danville thread. It's round nylon, nothing fancy. A few wraps towards the bend of the hook, and a few wraps back towards the head to lock that into place. Since we're not tying on a bare hook, we're going to do this a little bit differently. So first I will make sure I have a couple feathers that have a similar amount of fluff. Maybe these two. And then for the orange, maybe these two. So I'm going to start with the bottom side, which becomes the top of the jig when we fish it. So we're going to start with the darker color first, and I'm going to attack this with 2 different marabou tips. First tying it in from the 4 to 5 o'clock position, and then I'll rotate my vise and tie the second one in from the 7 or 8 o'clock position, just because it's easier than trying to squeeze my fingers directly on top and to be able to wrap. So I know that that's the length I want, the length of the body. The length of the tail is the length of the body past the bend of the hook, which on this vise is just past that last marking. All right. Three wraps towards the bend of the hook, a couple wraps back to lock that into place, and then I can rotate my vise and go at it from this angle. Again, make sure, measure your fibers before you snip them. That was 4 wraps towards the bend of the hook and a couple wraps back. Your wraps might look a little sloppy. There's a couple fibers sticking through. We're going to correct that when we finish the collar. But now I can put my vise back up to the regular position. At this point, I could go with just one big white feather, you know, something that has enough fluff to match those 2 pinches would be okay, and just plop it right on top. But what I had done when I was picking the orange is I picked 2 white fibers that had the similar amount of fluff. I'll combine them since we can tie them on like so, but the volume is what we want to match the volume of the orange that we've just placed on there. And these tips are great. The profile on this jig, when it stops in the water and the hairs float, will be pretty big. It makes a really big profile, and then you pull it forward and it all will compress down. A lot of action on a jig like this. Bring your wraps up towards the head. And what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure that we are covering any gaps in the collar. I know this collar does have a little bit of space because of the area that we have here to tie onto, but we're stopping our wraps right before that ledge, right before the angle of that collar. Really helps the material flare. Very pretty jig. Now, it'd be a little bit easier to cover some of this if I used a size A thread or a flat fly tying thread. Either of those would work. I'm going to finish this off with my whip finish tool. Need to take a little bit of care not to catch the eye of the hook. Three wraps and it's on there securely. Another reason for using the thin thread is so it's not terribly bulky around the collar. Marabou is fairly thick, the stems. On a pinch like this, I could use just one each of white and orange, but then we might find that there'd be a bare spot, a gap between the colors. So we're trying to reduce that as much as possible. And holy cow, this will be a pretty jig. Let me turn off my face. So I'm looking forward to fishing this. Something like this I would put under a bobber, and we fish in the springtime. An interesting head. It's kind of similar to a ball, though it does have a little bit of a point, giving it kind of a minnow profile. And like I said, it also has the Popeye style eyes. So a very, very pretty jig. Looking forward to fishing with that one. I think that will do it for us today. I'm going to tie up a couple more of those, and that actually looks so pretty. I might cast up a couple more too, and paint a couple different color heads. Do something like a black and white, red and white, of course. Absolutely, white head with red and white hair with the red collar. It's a go-to color for me. But I think that'll do it. If you have any suggestions, go ahead, put those down in the comments below. As always, like and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Feel free to share any of our videos, as it does increase awareness of the channel. Tie up some marabou, and until next time, guys, keep tying in tight lines.